What if I told you that the month you were born wasn't just a number on the calendar, but a hidden blueprint quietly shaping your destiny? It sounds strange, right? But not as strange as living your entire life under invisible patterns shaped by psychology, astrology, cultural rhythms, and unconscious expectations without ever realizing it. Jung once said that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And that's exactly what happens to most people when it comes to their birth month. You think your personality is just how you are? Maybe. Or maybe you've been following an inner script that was handed to you the day you were born. One tied to seasonal energies, societal beliefs, archetypes, and emotional conditioning. And once you understand that, you start seeing yourself and your past through a completely different lens. This isn't about zodiac fluff or shallow cliches. This is about decoding how your self-image was built, how people expected you to behave, and how the timing of your arrival quietly became the framework of your emotional and psychological life. And once you see it, really see it, you can change everything. Some people roll their eyes when they hear the word astrology, as if they're about to be told about fairies dancing on the moon. But what most don't realize is that zodiac signs carry ancient archetypes that do, in fact, shape the way we perceive the world and, more importantly, how the world perceives us. Being born in August, for example, places you under the archetype of the lion: leadership, presence, and a thirst for recognition. This isn't just horoscope talk, it's symbolic behavior in action. These archetypes act like ancient codes embedded in our unconscious, and here's where it intersects with psychology. Being born in a certain month activates collective symbols that can even influence body language. Have you noticed how Scorpios tend to have piercing eyes, while Geminis speak with their hands? It might sound like a stretch until you start paying attention. Zodiac signs function as living metaphors, and interestingly, even people who claim not to believe in any of it often end up behaving as if it were true. Born in January? You may have inherited the symbolic weight of beginnings, responsibility, goal setting, pressure. Born in November? Then the theme of rebirth and emotional intensity may follow you around like a shadow. This isn't about predicting the future, it's about recognizing patterns. Throughout time, people have noticed that those born in certain months often share personality tendencies. That doesn't mean all Taurians are stubborn, but rather that there's a symbolic climate that makes that trait more likely to surface. It's the symbolic atmosphere of birth shaping the psyche. Want to try something? Think about the most memorable people in your life and find out when they were born. Then look up the symbolic themes of those months. You might be surprised. And what's more fascinating, when we learn someone's birth month, we often feel that aha moment. Their personality suddenly makes more sense. This kind of insight isn't meant to box anyone in. Quite the opposite, it expands self-understanding. When you grasp the symbolic climate of your birth, you stop fighting your natural tendencies and start using them as tools. It's like surfing the wave instead of swimming against it. People born in summer, for example, often carry more expansive energy. Winter births tend to lean toward introspection. That can influence everything from your group dynamics to how easily you focus. Astrology, in this sense, works like a map, not a GPS that tells you where to go, but a compass that shows you which way the wind is blowing. And if you're thinking, this is just coincidence, pause and reflect. How often have you felt out of sync with the people around you, like you were on a different frequency? Maybe it's because your birth month carries an archetype distinct from the collective season. That causes friction, but also magnetism, when you know how to use it. Want to apply this knowledge? Start by noting your birth month and reading about the archetypes tied to it. Then ask yourself, do these patterns show up in my life? Which behaviors have I adopted because of them? More importantly, which ones do I want to keep? And which ones am I ready to transform? And this leads us to a deeper question. If the environment, the season, the heat, the cold, the light, can shape our personality, then birth is just the beginning of a much larger story. Developmental psychology reminds us that chance has a role, including the chance of being born in January versus December. Have you ever noticed how kids born early in the school year seem to have a slight edge? It's not magic, it's relative maturity. A few months of difference at a young age can massively impact confidence and performance. Imagine two kids in the same grade, one born in January, the other in December. Both are technically 6 years old, but cognitively and emotionally, that gap could be nearly a full year. This shapes how they see themselves. One may feel like a leader, the other like they're always catching up. That simple timing can set the tone for how their self-image begins to form. And it's not just in school. In sports, for example, being born in the first few months of the year often gives a physical and developmental advantage. Many elite athletes were born in the first half of the year because it allowed them to stand out early in competitive environments. Repeated success creates a psychological truth. I'm good at this. That belief sticks. Now, picture the kid born at the end of the year who was always the smallest, the last picked for the team. That sticks too. Jung spoke about the importance of the individual path, and here, you can already see how those paths begin to diverge. The difference between I'm capable and I'm behind might begin with something as random as a birth month. If you've ever felt behind for reasons you couldn't quite explain, maybe this is the missing piece. Sometimes, it's not a lack of talent, it's just that you entered the stage a little later. And that's not a disadvantage if you understand the setup. In fact, that awareness can help you adjust your strategy and grow on your own terms. Practically speaking, it means not comparing yourself to someone who had a different starting line. It's like running a marathon where others began meters ahead, knowing that changes everything. If you're a parent, pay attention to this with your kids. A real tip? Help kids born later in the year excel in areas where age doesn't dictate success, like creativity, empathy, or problem solving. Another fascinating angle. Sunlight in early infancy can influence hormone levels and even emotional tendencies. A baby born in winter is exposed to light differently than one born in summer. That can impact everything from sleep patterns to energy levels and mood. It's as if the universe gives you your opening tone, and you carry it forward in subtle ways. Of course, this doesn't decide your fate, but it shapes you. And when the shaping is unconscious, you keep trying to fit into molds you don't understand. Once you see the mold, you can break it or reshape it to serve you. Psychology isn't a sentence, it's a flashlight. Each insight turns on a new light in the dark corners of the self. Jung often reminded us that personality is a dynamic construction. Knowing how time and season influence that process gives you more control over your personal story. You're no longer a victim of randomness, you become the narrator of your own path. A narrator who understands the setting where the story began and is now ready to explore what comes next. And if the when and where of your birth can shape how you perform, imagine what they do to how you see yourself. That's exactly what we'll explore in the next layer. Somewhere along the way, we stop asking, "Who am I?" and start performing who we think we're supposed to be. The theory of the self, especially in the light of thinkers like Carl Rogers, reveals just how fragile and powerful this performance can be. When someone believes their birth month influences who they are, that belief can quietly reshape their inner compass. It becomes a script, and we all tend to play our roles, don't we? Let's say someone is born in October, and hears all their life that Libras are diplomatic and balanced. Over time, that idea doesn't just remain a fun trivia fact. It becomes a guideline. I should stay calm, they tell themselves, even when they want to scream. That dissonance between their true emotional response and the idealized version of themselves creates what Rogers called incongruence, and that tension, if left unchecked, leads to anxiety, self-doubt, and even burnout. Jung saw the self not as a mask we wear, but as a deeper force guiding our individuation, our true becoming. So, imagine the conflict when the self wants one thing, but the expectations tied to your birth month push you toward another. The mind splits, subtly. One part longs for authenticity, while another clings to the comfort of fitting in. And here's the twist. We often don't even notice it happening. People often confuse their personality with their persona, the version of themselves shaped by what others expect. This is where the meaning of your birth month can get tricky. If you grow up constantly reminded that you're a December baby, always cheerful, you might suppress your sadness, even when it's completely valid. Over time, this gap between who you are and who you pretend to be grows wider until it becomes a silent burden. The key to healing that split is awareness. Ask yourself, do I act this way because it feels right, or because I was told this is who I am? That one question can shake your foundations in the best way. When people start untangling their true self from the expectations around them, a kind of rebirth happens. It's subtle at first, but it feels like breathing for the first time after years underwater. Let's make this practical. If your birth month is known for producing leaders, but you've always felt more comfortable behind the scenes, try challenging that story. Volunteer for something you're passionate about without stepping into the spotlight. Observe how it feels. Is there guilt? Relief? Your reaction will tell you if you've been living for others or finally for yourself. Another example. Many people born under emotional signs like Cancer or Pisces grow up being told they're overly sensitive. Some toughen up as a defense. Others over-identify with emotion and forget how to set boundaries. Either way, the label becomes a cage, and the self, trapped inside, gets smaller with time. But when you notice the cage, you can start unlocking it, one truth at a time. Jung spoke of integrating the self, bringing all parts into wholeness. That includes the parts we reject because they don't match the archetype we've inherited. Your birth month may hold symbolic meaning, but it doesn't define your limits. Think of it as a doorway, not a prison. You walk through it, but you don't have to stay locked inside. This is where self-reflection becomes sacred. Journaling, therapy, or even deep conversations with trusted friends can help you uncover where your self was swapped for an expectation. Once you spot the exchange, you're free to reclaim what was always yours. And that freedom? It's the first step toward real psychological strength. And speaking of expectations, what happens when those ideas come not from within, but from the people around you? What if others' beliefs about your birth month begin to shape your reality in ways you never chose? That's a powerful and often overlooked force we're about to dive into. Imagine a teacher who believes that children born in March are naturally gifted. She doesn't say it out loud, but subtly, she gives them more attention, more encouragement, more smiles when they succeed. Over time, those kids begin to perform better, not because of magic, but because belief shaped behavior. That's the Rosenthal effect. And yes, it can begin with something as simple as your birth month. Now, flip the script. Imagine being born in September, hearing for years that you're indecisive because you're a Virgo or Libra. People make jokes, repeat stereotypes, and eventually you start doubting yourself when making decisions. That's how self-fulfilling prophecies work. The story is told so many times, it becomes a psychological blueprint. And guess what? You start acting it out. This isn't about blaming others. It's about realizing how deep the programming runs. Jung would say we internalize archetypes and project them into our daily lives. But what happens when those archetypes are chosen for us? When a child is repeatedly told Scorpios are intense and manipulative, they might start policing their emotions or worse, using intensity as a weapon, thinking it's just who they are. Let's take a practical example. A child born in April hears from family, teachers, even memes that Aries are born to lead. That child, even if naturally introverted, may start pushing themselves into leadership roles not out of passion, but out of pressure. They act confident to match expectations, and people respond accordingly. The loop completes. The prophecy is fulfilled. But here's the trick. When we act out of expectation, rather than authenticity, we often feel drained. It's like wearing shoes that don't quite fit. You can walk, but it hurts. That pain may not be visible at first, but it builds. Over time, you lose touch with your natural rhythm, and suddenly, you're living someone else's version of you. The first step to breaking the cycle is noticing where it shows up. Ask yourself, what do people expect from me because of when I was born? Then go deeper. Do I want to keep meeting those expectations? This isn't rebellion, it's alignment. And alignment brings peace. Not the peace of pleasing everyone, but the peace of knowing yourself. You can also reverse the effect. Choose your own label. If you're born in December and people say you're always optimistic, challenge that by exploring the depth of your emotions. Write poetry. Take quiet time alone. Allow your complexity to surface. When you do that, you start influencing how others see you, not the other way around. Jung's work reminds us that individuation is the process of becoming whole, but you can't become whole while playing out scripts handed to you by others. Self-fulfilling prophecies aren't destiny. They're choices repeated until they harden into identity. But anything constructed can be deconstructed and rebuilt, stronger, freer, more you. The irony is that we're so used to being told who we are that we forget to ask ourselves. And asking takes courage. Because once you see the invisible hand shaping your story, you can't unsee it. But you can reclaim the pen. You can rewrite the narrative. And speaking of rewriting, not all influences come from psychology or expectations. Some of the most powerful meanings tied to your birth month are hidden in the very fabric of culture itself. Let's explore how society, its traditions, holidays, and rhythms quietly mold the meaning of your arrival. Think about being born in December. In many Western cultures, that month is wrapped in holiday lights, spiritual stories, and family traditions. So even before you understand language, you're surrounded by symbols of generosity, reflection, and togetherness. That atmosphere leaves a mark. It becomes part of your early emotional landscape, shaping how you see the world and your place in it. Now, shift the lens. In agricultural societies, being born during the harvest season might carry a symbolic link to abundance, prosperity, and celebration. Your birth is not just a private event, it's woven into the rhythm of nature and community. That kind of cultural anchoring creates a sense of meaning that goes beyond individual psychology. You're born into a story already being told. This isn't abstract theory, it's emotional coding. If your birth aligns with a national holiday, religious festival, or seasonal transition, it subtly affects how others treat you and how you see yourself. A child born on New Year's Day, for instance, might be associated with new beginnings or even pressure to be special, to live up to something. That's not coincidence, it's cultural imprinting in action. In some regions, birth during certain months even affects access to resources or rites of passage. For example, in countries with strict school entry cutoffs, children born just before the deadline may be the youngest in class, shaping their social status and academic journey. So yes, the calendar isn't just a passive background. It's an active agent in shaping your self-concept. Want a real-life example? In Japan, children born right after the start of the school year often have an academic edge, and that edge influences everything from university entrance to job placement. Over time, birth month stops being just a date, it becomes a status marker. That creates internalized beliefs about competence, worth, and potential. Even in Western pop culture, some months carry implicit value. September babies are often seen as back-to-school focused and grounded. July births get linked to summer freedom and expressive energy. These narratives may seem harmless, but they build layers of expectation in schools, families, even in relationships. And again, the individual often adjusts to match the story. If you were born in a quiet month, say February or November, you may have felt like your birthday always got overlooked. No big events, no sunny weather, maybe even shared with national tragedies. That too shapes your emotional memory. But here's the thing. Once you're aware of it, you can rewrite the tone. You can reclaim the narrative and inject your own meaning into it. Jung often emphasized that meaning is subjective. It's not just what something is, but what it represents to you. So, your birth month isn't just about external associations. It's about the story you choose to build around it. Do you see it as lucky, intense, cold, magical? That perception becomes your truth, unless you challenge it. To apply this practically, explore the cultural symbolism of your birth month. What stories are told during that time? What songs, rituals, or values are celebrated? Then ask yourself, do these reflect who I am or who I've been expected to be? That one reflection can unlock a whole new level of self-awareness. And now that you've seen how culture and tradition weave meaning into something as personal as your birthday, it's time to zoom out. What if this whole exploration wasn't just about months, but about destiny, personality, and the deeper symbols that live inside you? Now that you've uncovered how something as simple as your birth month carries layers of meaning, psychological, cultural, symbolic, the real question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you keep living out the script that was written for you? Or are you finally ready to write your own? Because let's be honest, awareness without action is just decoration. You've seen how expectations, archetypes, and social rhythms have shaped you, but transformation only happens when you decide to take the wheel. So ask yourself, how much of who you are was chosen by you? What? This is your moment to break free, to rewrite the narrative, to become more than the month, the symbol, the stereotype. Your destiny doesn't come from a date, it comes from what you do with it. So if this opened your eyes, don't let it stop here. Leave a comment sharing what resonated most with you. Reflect, question, interact. That's how this knowledge comes alive. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because there's so much more waiting for you here.